People don't even go to flicks anymore because they take a video cassette home, and I think it's a lovely combination. You go out, have a delightful meal, sit back in the same place, you don't have to bother about moving, and see a lovely play.
Put your mic down there and I'll do a little music for you.
But I love the Central Coast, and it's very special for me. I love it, very.
Probably the biggest sports story to break this year was the giant-killing effort of Peter Doohan in ousting two-times Wimbledon champion Boris Becker from this year's competition.
I felt like the crowd wanted me to do something spectacular. I wasn't sure what to do. I was just in a moment of disbelief. I thought I was going to throw my racket in the crowd and then decided against it because I might have to use it next round.
It was also the year a future Wimbledon champ emerged, Rachel McQuillan. The 16-year-old spearheaded Australia's win in the World Youth Cup, beating some of the world's best 16 and under players. Rachel also became the first ever to win the Australian under-16 and under-18 titles in the same year, and also the South Australian and Adelaide Opens in the same year. To swimming, and a regular member of the Australian team these days, is Merewether's Donna Proctor. Since the beginning of the year, the 18-year-old has taken 10 seconds off her best for the 400 metres individual medley, breaking the national record nearly every time she competed. Her Australian record of 4 minutes 47.4 seconds ranks her number 6 in the world. This year's Surf Fest was again at the forefront of surfing, with the world's best making their way to Newcastle. But it was to be Sydney-sided Tommy Carroll who would prove most consistent to win the BHP Steel International. 1987 was also the year that the Merewether Surf Riders Club finally took out the Australian team championships at Bronte Beach in Sydney. Merewether had either been runner-up or third in the previous 3 years of the championships, but it seemed the tag team format of competition suited the Newcastle boys for a spectacular last wave win. And Nicky Wood took on and beat the best at the Bells Beach Classic.
Australia trying to promote forward.
In motor racing, Harold Gill, a 40-year-old from Newcastle, finished third in the gruelling wind safari over 6,000 kilometres from Sydney to Darwin. Meanwhile, one local who did make it into the winner's circle was Brian Morley in the bone-crushing 160-kilometre off-road event, the Bridgestone International at Kempsey. Our disabled sportsmen also proved themselves the best in the world. Glenn Rose won 2 gold medals in swimming at the Special Olympics, Ruth Campbell took the gold in the 50-metre sprint, and Mark Turnbull, Neil Henderson and Glenn Dowie helped the Australian soccer team to another gold medal. Disabled water skier Jeff Burgess won the overall world champion trophy at the World Water Ski Trophy for the Disabled. Competing in the arm disability section, Jeff won the ski jump and trick skiing events and was placed second in the slalom. In cricket, Robert Holland decided to call it quits from state and national duties. Dutchie, however, will continue to play at local club level. Fans were out in force at the annual Sheffield Shield clash played at the No. 1 Sportsground. Although Queensland easily beat New South Wales inside 3 days, 18,000 locals turned up to see many of Australia's cricketing heroes, as well as flamboyant Englishman Ian Botham.
The danger. Kenzai going after the Brotherhood.
In horse racing, it took a photo to give the Brotherhood first place in this year's Gold Cup at the Newcastle racecourse, while Full Page was too good in the NBN Cameron handicap.
Full Page wins the Cameron in a great finish.
And a controversial horse doping incident, the East Coast's first finding of the banned drug atorphine, better known as elephant juice, was detected in a urine sample from Newcastle horse Chock Daly.
Chock Daly got there. Chock Daly first, Lady...
To be the end for South. Botham scored a try. In Rugby League, Lakes United made it a hat-trick of Newcastle Premierships when they beat South at the No. 1 Sportsground before a full house. It was also the year the Newcastle Knights started buying players for the 1988 Sydney League competition. The home ground will be the International Sports Centre, which is being reconstructed to seat 28,000. On a sad note, it was also the year that Newcastle's greatest ever, and possibly Australia's greatest ever player, Brian Carlson, passed away. And finally on Rugby League, the Newcastle Aboriginal team took out the state Aborigine competition at Armidale. They will take on the Queensland champion side next year.
The year got off to a violent start with the murder of Maitland taxi driver Patrick Wills. It was a crime that shocked residents and led local taxi drivers to call for greater protection. Then, after the arrest of a juvenile, the futility of the murder fully emerged. He died in a struggle over a small amount of money. The next in the chain was the murder of scoutmaster and accountant Peter Simpson in April. His body was found on the banks of Lake Macquarie at Fennell Bay. He had been brutally assaulted. Police later charged a man and he appeared in Wallsend Court. Perhaps one of the most baffling crimes this year was the murder of prostitute Cheryl Birchall in April. Her naked body was found by children on the banks of Throsby Creek. She had been strangled with her bra strap and then stabbed. Detectives scoured the streets talking to fellow prostitutes and regular clients, but came up with nothing. In June, there was a violent murder of Maitland jail inmate Peter John Bell. He was found by a prison officer bleeding profusely from lacerations to the neck. After police inquiries, his cellmate, Roderick Hilton Perry, was charged and appeared in Maitland Court. Another particularly violent murder was that of 45-year-old Frederick George Schmidt. He received a blow to the head and then had his throat cut as he took a bath in his Zara Street flat. A man was charged with murder and a woman was charged with being an accessory. And most recently, there was the murder of 58-year-old house painter and handyman Tanzay Tylev. He died of massive head injuries after being hit with an object, probably a shovel. Two people, a 19-year-old woman and a 23-year-old Mayfield man, have been charged with the murder. And in a joint operation between New South Wales and Queensland Police, a man and a woman were arrested at this motel at the entrance. They appeared at Wyong Court after being questioned over the murder of Noosa head schoolgirl Sian Kingi. They were extradited to Queensland, but not before angry crowds had gathered outside the court to jeer the pair as they were whisked away. During the year, there were a number of ghastly sexual assaults, but none was more horrific than the abduction and sexual assault of a little 2-year-old girl. She was taken from her Charlestown bedroom as she slept to Boomerang Park in Mayfield West. She was found the next morning by residents who lived adjacent to the park. A 19-year-old Mayfield man was subsequently charged with the sexual assault and stood trial in Newcastle court. There was also public outcry at news that a toddler had been left in a drain on the F3 freeway. Fortunately, she did not move onto the road and was picked up in the dark, cold and shaking by a passing truck driver. He alerted Hornsby Police. The girl's mother and de facto were taken into custody and charged with exposing a child to danger. year also saw an unusual number of sieges. The most dramatic of these was a 7-hour stakeout at Myola Street in Mayfield. After shooting a man in nearby O'Mara Street, the Vietnamese offender held up in this Myola Street house. Police cordoned off the street and waited. But eventually they decided to bring things to a head and fired canisters of tear gas into the house. The man was found under the bed, his shotgun alongside. This year will especially be remembered for bank robberies. Bank after bank became the target of armed robbers who threatened bank staff with their weapons. Police caught many of the offenders. And police were also successful in catching up with some of the Hunters' drug offenders. These included a raid on the clubhouse and homes of members of the Gladiator bikie gang. About $40,000 worth of marijuana was seized, along with firearms which included a Bren machine gun.
The Lake Macquarie Development Awards are to be made every 3 years, starting next year for projects completed during the last 3 years. Judges will be considering entries in 4 categories: building development, engineering development, protection of the natural environment and promotion of development. Winners will be awarded plaques and diplomas in March. Mayor of Lake Macquarie, Ivan Welsh, says while the awards are not a part of the council's push to attract new developers to the area, they should encourage high standards.
It'll certainly assist, there's no problem there, and I'm sure that the type of development we get, if they are aiming for these awards, will be better for the city.
Is there not a danger of the award encouraging too much development too soon, such as shopping centres around the lake?
I'd agree with you there that this is the case, but at the moment I don't think we've hit that particular point as yet. I think we've still got a lot of development to happen around the lake, and the more development, the more growth in numbers will be encouraged, and I think that's what we've got to aim for, employment.
Several police officers with a good knowledge of the mountainous country to the west of the mid-north coast spent the day continuing the hunt for 32-year-old David Cowan, who is still being sought over the alleged attack on a Musselbrook couple on Christmas night at a camping area west of Gloucester. Whilst the hunt for the man continued, his 30-year-old brother appeared in court. Stephen Cowan made a brief appearance before a Justice of the Peace in Taree local court today and was formally refused bail and remanded in custody until next week. He appeared on 6 offences including kidnapping, sexual assault, and possessing a weapon with intent to commit sexual assault. Even though David Cowan is still at large, police believe he's holed up in an area bounded by Walker, Nowandock and Warhope after he was last sighted at Mount Seaview. He's believed to be still driving a mid-blue coloured Suzuki Sierra 4-wheel drive tabletop utility, which was stolen from the victims of the weekend knife-point attack. It has Queensland registration plates 268 OWP. Cowan is described as 180 centimetres tall, medium to heavy build, noticeable blue eyes, receding light brown to grey hair, prominent nose, acne-scarred face, a moustache and maybe trying to grow a beard. He was last seen wearing blue jeans, a t-shirt and thongs. Police say the man is dangerous and shouldn't be approached. It's believed he may have an axe and knife in his possession. If there's fine weather tomorrow, police may mount an aerial search in their bid to locate Cowan.
His profession.
8-time world sprint car champion American Steve Kinser is favourite to take out the race, having won over 50 main events on the world sprint car circuit. He'll be accompanied by younger brother Randy, who is also highly ranked on the American circuit. They will have plenty of competition, however, from the likes of other internationals such as Jimmy Sills and Danny Smith. The Australian contingent for the Masters will include drivers from Victoria, South Australia, Queensland and New South Wales. Sydney driver Max Dumesny is expected to be one of the top drivers, as is Gary Rush, starting with a new car after destroying 2 cars in spectacular crashes at the start of the season.
The full-scale search of beach and surf started within minutes of reports that an 18-year-old Malaysian scout had been swept out to sea. While rubber duckies combed northward of the area where the man was last sighted, rescue choppers performed an aerial search. Low cloud and constant drizzle combined with murky water to make the task even harder. The missing man was one of 26 Malaysian scouts attending a Sydney jamboree who were billeted at Hawk's Nest for a few days of recreation. 15-year-old Christian Patterson was swimming with the scouts when they got into difficulties.
These 3 kids started getting taken out by a rip, and the beach inspectors saved one of them, and I saved another one, and the other kid just got taken out by the rip and we never saw him again.
It's thought the scouts were poor swimmers, but due to language problems, police were still uncertain exactly what had happened more than an hour after the tragedy.
We don't know whether he's got into difficulties himself and gone under the surface, or there's a possibility there may have been a shark attack. We're not certain.
Although hopes of finding the man alive have all but vanished, searchers decided to continue patrols offshore and along the coast until darkness.